It all started in a regular high school, in a 1-1 class. A couple of guys were sitting at a desk discussing a new RPG game and the fact that now everyone is playing it. The game was called Slave Hunt and was one of the most discussed games. Many fought for Zeus, but it was not so easy to get, and not everyone succeeded. The game was to enslave the heroes through their efforts and then fight with others, but to get some characters, more collars were required. Some people didn't like this game because everything was based on real life and there were a lot of fights. To be more precise, teenagers believed that they could have slaves in real life and thus fought in real life. One of the guys hired slaves and provoked fights by setting his slave on other people and giving orders to attack. Often such attacks were not very successful and caused problems for those who were slaves. Physically, it only caused pain, and in this way, many people made real people their slaves. As it turned out, many even divided their slaves into ranks and revered each such person, taking into account his rank. Because of the way this was transferred into real life, people who were previously humiliated in a different way suffered. The girls from the class were only observers, and this caused problems for some. More problems arose for those who were subjected to such humiliation, since a lost battle was a problem for the slaves. They were humiliated because of the loss. One of the bosses gave the opportunity to choose punishments. Someone also almost resorted to torture, and apparently such influence only gave them pleasure. The guy could only beg for forgiveness, and this was his only chance. He could only say that he would definitely win further. But his so-called master was not going to just accept his pleas for forgiveness, and he immediately knew that the battle would be lost. The guy was ready for a lost battle and prepared the so-called strengthening of his fighter in the form of a handheld shocker. The guy himself understood that he was rather an object of ridicule in this class. One fine day, everything was the same as usual, but something was different. The guy warned that he had returned home, but his mother did not have time to prepare dinner because she had recently dozed off and did not have time. Yes, telling them that everything was fine and he would eat later, he went to his room without saying another word. He believed that his mother should not see his crippled body and fell helplessly onto the bed. He couldn't understand how electric shocks could make him stronger and thought that this guy was just an idiot. The guy's eyes filled with tears from the pain he experienced, and he was also infuriated that he was forced to play this vile game instead of himself. The master believed that Daim was good at games, so that it would not be a problem for him to raise the level in Slave Hunt, and gave the order. He simply threatened the guy with the same shocker, and the guy, out of fear, agreed to fulfill the conditions. The guy started looking for that very game with the expectation that at least this way he wouldn't get an electric shock. But Daim was disappointed. His phone did not support the game, as he was too old for that. Another application caught his eye, and he wondered what it was. The game was called Buller Hunt, and the guy thought that it was the same game as Slave Hunt, but worse for phones. The game also had a description that said that this game could help with bullying at school. Daim received a message from Kang-woo asking him to urgently come to the park. Yes, Im was scared. If he didn't come, then serious troubles awaited him. The guy immediately jumped out of bed and rushed to the park, falling. He didn't understand why Kang-woo was needed because school was already over. Yes, Im didn't even notice that he put hunting for bullers on loading. And now the guy is already approaching the park and does not know what awaits him next. As it turns out later, everyone thought that he would take the money, but the guy didn't guess, so he had to get paid for his slowness. He didn't think that he would demand money and tried to beg for forgiveness for this. Kang-woo believed that the guy should guess that he was called not just TFR and was obliged to bring money. Yes, Im was told to take his feet in his hand and run home for money, but he said that he didn't even have money at home. Kang-woo thought that since the guy didn't have money, he could steal it from his mom, but he knew that he needed any money from Da-im. Then some unknown guy appeared and said that Da-im was a beggar and had nowhere to get money from. Kang-woo was surprised how he knew this. The guy said that Da-im's mom is sick and that everyone has known this since elementary school, but Kang-woo didn't know this. The guy angrily answered the questions of two bullies about whether his mother was really sick or not. The next question struck the guy as he was asked whether he would receive insurance for the death of his mother or not, from which Da-im was shocked. Kang-woo joked about Da-im's mom and how she looked like a mob from the game, and the other guys were shocked by this behavior. He believed that the guy would try to run away anyway and take the insurance money. Da-im was very angry at Kang-woo's behavior. He couldn't understand why they treated him like that. The guy's head was stuck with the thought of simply killing his bully and not putting up with it anymore. Then they noticed the expression on Da-im's face and immediately began to wonder what he was thinking about. Kang-woo quickly found himself near the guy's face and decided to ask what was in his head. Yes, Im got scared and immediately began to come up with something, saying that this facial expression happened because something got into his eye. Threats from Kang Woo immediately followed towards the guy, saying that if this happens again, the guy will get punched in the nose. The bully decided that he was just wasting his time and, yes, he doesn't need them, since he doesn't have money. The guy remained in the same position as he was, still drowning in his thoughts about how weak he was. Soon he forced himself to at least sit on a bench, but still continued to humiliate himself in his own thoughts. Humiliation of himself was his outlet, so to speak, because he did not understand what else to do. He tore his hair out and thought that even when he listened to jokes about his mother and did nothing, he understood that he was considered a slave only because of his fears. Then he heard an incomprehensible sound coming from his phone and it distracted him. He received a game notification on his phone, which surprised him even more. The notification came from Buller Hunt, which surprised the guy even more because he didn't think that he had installed it. The game auto-started, and information appeared on the screen that a hooligan had been detected and he needed to be made a slave. All this seemed strange to Da-im. The application also said that you need to move 50 meters forward, which is what the guy decided to do, although he did not understand why. Looking ahead, he noticed a gang familiar to him, or to be more precise, the Kang-woo gang. He didn't understand why the application brought him here, and then he saw that the application offered to drag something like a collar to Kang-woo. He became very interested in what would happen if he did as the application said, and he decided to try it. After swiping across the screen, something like a collar began to move onto Kang-woo's neck, and the guy just watched. Then the most unexpected thing happened. It was as if something flew out of the screen. Kang-woo was immediately thrown back as if someone had slapped him hard in the face. The bully was lying unconscious, and his gang, looking around and not understanding what had happened, noticed the guy. Yes, I'm himself did not expect that this something could appear right there. He was frightened by what happened. Looking at the screen, he saw that the attempt was failed, and the failure was also explained by the fact that simply throwing the collar would not work, and it was proposed to do the same thing when the opponent was on the ground. Realizing that something was not going according to plan, the guy could only freeze and did not understand what else he could do. Kang-woo, rising to his feet, was very angry at this behavior of his slave, and everyone could feel it. Immediately approaching Da-im, he told him that he would not survive today, and the guy could only cry and regret in fear. Moving a little away from Da-im, he continued. He reminded that he asked to play slave hunt, and not to make him a slave. The guy tried to justify himself, but it didn't work out well because Kang-woo had a collar on a chain in his hands. The hooligan swung and sent the chain at Da-im. It quickly cut through the air and rushed towards the guy. The chain flew with such speed that the guy flew into the wall, experiencing enormous pain. Kang-woo, still presenting, asked Da-im if he really hoped to catch him with this chain. The guy tried to explain that this chain flew out of the phone and he himself did not understand how this happened. The whole gang was shocked by what they heard because it even sounded implausible. The guys were shocked and thought that Yesim was making fun of them, and it really annoyed them. The hooligans decided to treat him more humiliatingly and started trying to undress him. But the guy still tried to explain that it was true. Several guys were holding Da-im's hands and the leader was pulling off his pants. Then the guy suddenly yells at everyone that his phone fell out, and one of the bullies is distracted by this. The guy was released, but his phone could have ended up in the hands of a hooligan who had not seen such old models for a very long time. He believed that such phones were no longer used and was shocked to see such an old phone. The guy's face brought back memories of how in the 4th grade everyone already had phones and everyone played games on them, and this became a vital necessity. But the guy didn't have a phone, so he was kept away from everyone, although he really wanted to play with the others. Arriving home that day, he threw a tantrum, saying that he urgently needed a phone because everyone had one. Mom tried to calm him down that day by saying that such behavior was outrageous, but Da-im stood his ground, saying that he also wanted to play games with everyone. And then he made the mistake of saying that his mother would be to blame if they suddenly began to bully him for not having a phone. That day he put pressure on his mother and she gave in, promising him a phone number. He actually got the coveted phone, and he thought it was very good at games. In Da-im's mind, everyone was watching him play and praising him. But when he came to school and started showing off, everyone reacted exactly differently than he thought. At first, everyone wondered if this was the latest model, but when they saw it, they began to despise it for being an older model and for the fact that any game would lag on it. Hearing the ridicule, the guy could only look at his phone in confusion and think why everyone treated his phone like that. And he returned home screaming that his mother had bought him a terrible phone. The guy, just like last time, started shouting at his mother for buying a bad phone and just wanted to say that people can be humiliated for such a phone, but then there was a conversation with my mother that he overheard. He heard that she had not paid rent for 3 months. They were kicked out of the apartment for non-payment, and their mother begged to give them a little more time so that she could find the money. The guy at that moment could only think of asking for a petition and then calling his mother. Then he realized that this phone was the only one she could afford and stopped asking for anything after that. Yes, seeing that the bully took his phone, he tried to convince him that even if he sold it, he wouldn't be able to get much. Kang-woo was surprised by the guy's reaction and became interested in her. A thought flashed through his head. He suggested that this thing was very important for the guy, and he said that if Yes-im crawled between his legs, he would return the phone to him. The guy really decided to do this just to get the mobile phone back. He completely abandoned his pride. Everyone couldn't believe that the guy would actually do it, and someone just said that something like this needed to be filmed urgently. But when Yes-im almost did it, the bully changed his mind and said that he didn't like it. Afterwards, he simply smashed the phone in front of the eyes of the guy who was kneeling. The boy couldn't believe his eyes. At first, he didn't even understand what had happened. After the realization came to him, he simply helplessly lowered his head and thought about how vile the guys had acted, and they only mocked what was happening. The guy could only once again express to himself personally his dissatisfaction with how he once again failed to protect what was dear to him. Squeezing the phone with his hand, the guy thought that if he had a little more strength, he could prevent such an attitude towards himself. He saw a notification like in the game that he had already seen on his phone. The notification said that the game was being transferred to his mind because his phone no longer worked. Yes, Im was shocked by this and only thought about where this window appeared before his eyes. Remembering everything, he realized that the strangeness began even when a collar appeared out of nowhere. Having realized everything a little, he could no longer understand how he could still doubt what was happening. After all, windows kept appearing before his eyes, and one could assume that this was all reality. Another window appeared before his eyes which said that for submission the person needed to be on the ground, and Yes-im suggested that he needed to be knocked down. Then he shouted to Kan-woo, which he was clearly surprised. The guy doubted his strength a little, but he realized that he definitely needed to act, despite all the doubts in his head. He rushed at the bully with fists and shouts that he shouldn't have touched his phone. But then something happened that Da-im didn't expect. Kang-woo's fist also flew at him, which made him even a little scared. But he still decided to continue the attack despite the fact that he understood that he would most likely lose. He managed to dodge the first attack because he had known this bully for several days. Under Kang-woo's feet was the same collar that appeared from the phone, and the guy immediately picked it up. At first, the bully didn't even understand what happened and how the boy was able to dodge. He prepared to twist the chain from the collar onto his hand and prepared his second fist for a blow. The guy wanted to decide the outcome of the fight in one blow, and it seems he even managed to do it. The whole gang was shocked that their leader was lying unconscious. They tried hard to get from him at least an answer to the question, but he was silent. The guy immediately threw the collar and realized that most likely he had succeeded. This really was the end. Kang-woo got caught in the collar, and a window immediately appeared saying that he was now Da-im's slave. The guy was immensely happy that he was able to do this and did not pay attention to what was happening around him. But in his head, he could still hear the conversations of the guys who were already flying at him with a desire to take revenge for their leader. Then, a notification appeared in front of the guy's face saying that you can order Kang-woo to do anything because he is in absolute obedience. Yes, M decided to try and really give an order and shouted his order all over the street, and the first order was to stand up and protect him. Then a bunch of system notifications began to seem to be downloaded into the head of the hooligan who was also lying unconscious. Only the guy could see it, but Kang-woo was still lying on the ground without moving. The guys did not understand why their leader should protect him, and they also continued to fly at the guy with threats and the desire that he would die. But then the same bully flew up and started attacking his own guys, and Da-im was simply surprised that it really worked. Kang-woo's actions were incredibly fast. The first thing he did was hit one of the guys in the solar plexus. At the same second after the first blow, he was already flying towards the second of the guys to strike him too. The second of the guys was less lucky because the blow was delivered to the jaw, and with such enormous force that he flew off. One of the guys was writhing in pain, but otherwise, he showed signs of life. The second guy was badly bruised and unconscious. The guy was shocked by the actions of the bully and couldn't even say anything. Then, Kang-woo approached Da-im and reported that the order had been carried out, and he only looked at him with the same shocked eyes. You could even say he was scared because he was a hooligan and actually followed orders. It was obviously difficult to think about that. The rest of the guys from the gang were shocked by what their leader was doing, and he in turn wondered what further orders would be. An in-game notification also appeared in front of the guy stating that his slave was awaiting further orders. It began to dawn on the guy that the bully really was completely submissive to him, and remembering how everyone mocked him, he definitely came up with the next order. His order was to deal with every person from the gang. Kang-woo accepted the order and began to head towards the other hooligans who were already in fear trying to shout to him. The bully's eyes were filled with aggression. He told the guy that he was starting to carry out the task and moved closer and closer to the guys. After some time, a system notification was received stating that the order had been completed. Yes, I still couldn't believe what was happening. There was still misunderstanding in his eyes. A pile of unconscious bodies lay in front of Kang-woo, but he did not take any further action. But then he turned sharply and called Da-im, which immediately scared the boy and didn't know whether he should run away. But Kang-woo bowed his knee and began to apologize for all his past actions, saying that he was very sorry. Afterwards, he also confessed his submission on his knee, and a system notification also arrived, which informed him of the oath of allegiance. Yes, he was stunned to hear such a thing. He could not imagine that this person could do such a thing for him. Then another system notification appeared above the guy's head, which said, namely, it reported that the game had begun, which began to scare the boy, but now he knew for sure that the game was real. The next day, everything was as usual. Nothing had changed at school. Everyone was still going about their business, and yes, he also lived a calm life, so to speak. Two guys were humiliating a boy named Kirito. They were only interrogating him for now. They were wondering why. When he moved to high school, he stopped greeting them. One of the guys began to use physical force. He said that he wanted to see Kirito cry, but before he could finish speaking, he was hit in the head. It was amazing. No one had done this to him before, and he was interested in looking at this man's face. But in front of his face, he saw one of the worst people in this school and a small guy sitting on the bully's neck. The guys were in an incomprehensible downward position, naked, and they were clearly in pain and uncomfortable. Yes, I'm listened to the guy's gratitude, and Kang-woo sat safely on those two hooligans. The guy whom they saved from bullying was very interested in how he made the main bully of the school listen to him. Yes, I'm declared with a satisfied face that he was now his personal slave. But Kirito did not understand how this was possible and was amazed. A day earlier, at the moment when the boy realized that this game was real, he stood and thought about what to do next. He received several system notifications, the first of which was congratulations on taming the first rad, and the second reported that he had received a potion of combat skills. The guy was amazed that there were also different types of reinforcements, because for this reason, it added even more reality to the game. He decided that he should try to tame the other guys. Having hit one of the guys who was unconscious, he expected to see something similar to the same animation that was with Kang-woo. But this did not happen, and he began to think that he had done wrong, because before that, everything was the same. Then the system notification he had been waiting for finally appeared in front of his face. The notice stated that he had an insufficient level of control, so that he could not yet control someone other than Kang-woo to have another slave. Now he began to think about how to still raise the level to expand his power, and the bully was only waiting for new orders not far away. Kang-woo's face suddenly changed, and he didn't understand a little what was happening. He looked around and realized that everyone who was lying next to him had been beaten by his own hands. Yes, I received a notification that the guy was freed from absolute control. When the guy realized this, he was shocked. He couldn't understand how Kang-woo was able to get out of this state and couldn't understand what exactly happened. But then the bully was already flying with fists at him and with questions about what he did to him. The guy, noticing this, immediately shouted to the bully to freeze. He was clearly very scared that this might not work. The order was applied to him in full, and they both froze, one in misunderstanding of what was happening, and the second in fear. Kang-woo started yelling at Da-im because he didn't understand what was done to him and why he couldn't control his own body. Then a system notification appeared that the unconscious state was a temporary buff, but the guy would still follow orders and would not be able to resist them. Yes, listening to all the insults, I realized that the guy really couldn't resist orders, and he continued to threaten. Then the guy hit his slave in the guise of Kang-woo and continued to rejoice that this was reality. Then he announced to the bully that he was now his slave, from which he was clearly in shock. The guy was clearly preoccupied with the idea of taking over the entire class with the help of Kang-woo. The bully was clearly dissatisfied with the fact that he was under the influence of Da-im and often shouted at him for using his hands to eliminate his own friends. The boy was not simple due to the fact that he could control the bully. He ordered him to shut up and leave. A system notification immediately appeared indicating that an order had been applied to Kang-woo. Yes, Ima was infuriated by something and began to whine, and he thought that he would take a break from him for now and then just as easily return him. The guy told the second one that today he wants to teach a lesson to all the bullies in the class. That guy's already seen that Kang-woo simply cannot contradict Da-im and does everything he is told to do. And the guy had a plan. But they had to be humiliated in front of almost the entire school, and this was difficult to accomplish since he hardly communicated with anyone. For this reason, Da-im asked the guy to gather all the guys he knew and help him implement the plan. He wanted to wait for a large number of spectators, and after calling Kang-woo, the guy wondered what he would do if the plan failed. But Da-im was confident in his plan and that he would save the class from bullying. The guy very suddenly came to the realization that this was an opportunity for real change. He immediately rushed off shouting that he would try to bring as many guys as possible. Yes, I'm immediately wanted to praise him for how cool he said it, but his attention quickly switched. He heard a very familiar voice that disturbed his thoughts. As it turned out, there was a group of beautiful girls walking behind him, and one of them definitely excited his heart. The girl's name was Jia, and he adored her and how beautiful she always looked. He could not calmly react to her, but only froze in anticipation. His dream was to, at least, just talk to her. His heart was again captured by memories, and he understood that he could not do this before because he was a failure. He dreamed that as soon as he could subjugate everyone, they would be the most beautiful couple in the school. While he was happily drowning in his dreams of Jia, an acquaintance of his approached him. The guy brought other guys, but they didn't believe that some guy could do this. He asked no one to give up ahead of time and just believe in him and was ready to begin. As soon as he opened the doors, 3 angry hooligans, who were already waiting for his arrival, attacked him. They immediately threw him on the floor and began to humiliate him, saying that he also remained a slave. The boy who was rescued earlier was amazed at this attitude and began to worry about Da-im. The guys were angry with him and asked what he did to Kang-woo yesterday. They didn't understand that he could say such a thing to him, that they were so beaten. The guy with a malicious expression on his face began to attack the hooligans and said that today they would crawl on the floor from what he would do to them. This only made the guys laugh. They could not understand what kind of dirty trick this was and just drowned in laughter from these words. No one really understood what was happening and why the guy indulged in such behavior. But everyone supported him and believed that the guy had a plan that would change the school and their lives. Yes-im, in turn, understood that he was just a distraction and only attracted the attention of hooligans. Then he shouted sharply and called Kang-woo, which made everyone shocked. Only a shadow rushed in the corridor towards those guys. Then someone burst into the room in which all this was happening, and everyone was scared. Then an order was heard to deal with each of the hooligans, and the guy was confident. Then one of the bullies hit Da-im on the head, so much so that he almost fell because he thought that his mind was already starting to go crazy. They discussed the fact that the guy had something wrong with his head since he went crazy early in the morning. Yes, Da-im was not pleased, and he watched in anger, swearing. The guy knew that this was only Kang-woo's close friend from a parallel class, but he was still confident in his abilities and declared that he would be beaten by his own friend. The hooligans have already begun to think that the guy has dug up incriminating evidence on their friend. Because of this, Kang-woo listens to Da-im. One of the guys said that yesterday he rushed at them and beat them. The guy was interested to hear this personally from Kang-woo, but he was not at school all day. Yes, I'm still continued to call his slave and yell at the whole school. Everyone began to think that the guy was definitely going crazy because such behavior was inappropriate. The system reported that it was impossible to contact Kang-woo, and the guy kept trying to shout out because he had already begun to feel fear for himself and for the failure of the whole plan. Then one of the hooligans approached the guy and grabbed him by the collar, threatening him with violence for such behavior. The bully threateningly invited the guy to go out and talk alone in the toilet. The other guys stopped everyone who tried to follow them, telling them to stay where they were and wait. The entire crowd that came to watch the humiliation of the hooligans were in shock and did not understand what would happen now to Da-im. While he was being dragged, someone managed to run up to him and began to talk about how he should have time to ask for forgiveness from Pen-tae, that very friend of Kang-woo. After all, the guy himself knew that this man was very cruel because in high school he was in the same class with him and endured all this bullying. Yes, I'm just said that in any case he wouldn't apologize because they didn't do anything wrong and he doesn't understand what he should apologize for. The guy was shocked by such statements but did not say another word, leaving everything as it was. Yes. They started beating Ima, and then he realized that he really should have just apologized so that this wouldn't happen. He realized that he had completely forgotten what it was like to endure beatings, and the guy's anger did not subside. It was definitely unbearably painful, but this behavior could not be stopped, and he knew it very well. Someone stood behind the conversations while the guy was being beaten. The toilet played the role of an entertainment room. No matter how much he tried to contact Kang-woo, nothing worked, and there was no longer any connection with him. They began to interrogate him for what reasons that Hooligan listens to his orders because the guys believed that Da-im had some kind of incriminating evidence. The guy tried to explain that he had no dirt on anyone and was wondering how he should act in this situation. He already wanted to just let Kang-woo go and tame someone else, but who in this case? 3 of the bullies who dragged him into the toilet were C rank, which was considered almost the highest rank. But Pente was rank A, and so to speak the strongest of this quartet. Yes, I'm thought whether he would be able to knock out one of them with one blow or whether he was just lucky last time. Pengtai was warned that yesterday Kang-woo relaxed too much and fell into the guy's trap. The girls were amazed because they were invited to watch the show, but in the end, they saw the beating of some weakling. The guy was surprised by this attitude of the girls and said that he would definitely have fun for them. He turned to Da-im and told him in a commanding tone to take off his pants. The guy didn't understand that conversation and asked again, but he swung at him and said that he didn't have to repeat anything to him. He began to realize that he still remained a slave and began to unbutton his pants just so as not to be beaten. Everyone who stood in the toilet saw his shame, but he could only lower his head and endure. He understood that Kang-woo was a nobody. At the same moment, the boy heard the next order to take off his panties, too. Pengtai was angry at any questioning of orders and disobedience. He never thought that he would find himself in such a situation and did not know what to do, only hoping for Kang-woo to appear. Then someone broke down the doors to the toilet. Everyone was incredibly scared by this outcome of events. No one could understand what was happening, and they were very scared. The shadow of an unknown guy appeared in front of their faces, more like a huge and tall silhouette. Yes, Im at first thought that Kang-woo had come after all, but then he saw the face of a guy he knew, Kirito, who was the same loser. Pente did not understand that today was the day of the slave revolt, but still he was already moving towards the guy to remind him who he was and to show his superiority. Kirito was part of the same bullying attitude and therefore wanted to protect his friend who saved him not so long ago. Pente loved to mock this guy, calling him an elephant, and after what he saw, he only began to laugh more from this. The guy did it all without thinking, and when the bully caught up with him, he was very scared from the reminder of past days. The guy was thrown back into Da-im, receiving the same punishment for his actions. He didn't understand why Donggu came to the toilet and decided to ask, and Pengtai was glad that he came to save, but in the end, he got it. For some reason, the guy, without even understanding it, committed such actions, but he just wanted to pretend that nothing was happening and run away. But he only knew that Da-im's words could not get out of his head because he really dreamed that this would all end soon. After all, he promised to deal with all the hooligans. Donggu believed him with hope. The guy was shocked that someone trusted him so much because until that moment, he thought that no one would believe such a thing. After hearing Da-im, he realized that no matter what happened to him, he must do what he said and decided. He decided to protect the guy and all those he told that he could change the whole school by any means possible. He needed to think about the plan a little because he also had the power to make bullers slaves. One wonderful plan appeared in his head in which he needed help. He asked the guy to trust again, and then they would defeat Pengtai with the hands of Donggu, but the guy himself found it difficult to believe it. He put a cigarette in the guy's teeth and told him to take a drag and order him to give up everything he had in a scary voice. Donggu didn't understand what was happening, but Da-im didn't have time to explain everything because he had to act quickly. He agreed to do what he was told and began to do everything, ordering him to give all the money. Yes, compliantly gave all the money to the guy, pretending that he didn't want him to beat him. The hooligans did not understand what the guys were up to and why one was extorting money from the other. Now Donggu in the program began to be considered as a bully, and everything turned out as the guy planned. He immediately declared that he was refusing the slave Kang-woo as well as influence over him. System alerts immediately appeared indicating that Kang-woo was no longer a slave. The system also reported that since the slave does not exist, the guy gets one collar back. As soon as he saw that the same collar appeared in his hand, he understood how to proceed further. The guy immediately rushed, throwing the collar on Donggu, and all that remained was to see whether his plan would work. The collar ended up on the guy's neck, and he was even a little scared from surprise. The guy believed that he himself was a very big guy and that he should have a lot of strength, but he was too kind to fight. The system reported that Donggu became Da-im's slave. The guy was stunned and didn't understand what was happening. When he examined himself, he didn't notice any differences, but he felt them. Donggu was scared because his body was moving on its own. Yes, at that time, Im was thinking whether he should use the potion now because they were facing a serious battle. He still decided to use it, and the guy immediately became rank A, which definitely gave them superiority. Thanks to the potion, the guy acquired proficiency in the martial art of sumo for a short period of time, and this calmed Da-im. Only one guy believed that they would succeed. The bullies, looking at the sumo stand, just chuckled, not understanding what was happening. Then the order was heard to destroy Pekte, but the hooligans just continued to laugh at what was happening. Yes, received a notification about the reward for completing the task, and he was surprised. But when the guy fully realized what was happening, he was only happy that he had quests. Donggu still couldn't understand why his body kept moving on its own, and it scared him greatly. Then the guy heard Da-im's voice in his head, which announced that he would control him, but the guy didn't even understand whether Da-im himself knew this. The guy quickly switched to the fact that he needed to destroy the hooligans as much as possible, and nothing else should bother him for now. Then Donggu thought that maybe he really became a sumo wrestler. Then one of the hooligans rushed to attack the guy, saying that even if he became a sumo wrestler, he would not be able to defeat him because this is the most useless fight. The guy understood that sumo was not just another type of wrestling, but something more, because he spent a huge amount of time playing games with this type of wrestling. All the weight had to be transferred correctly into the palms and seize the moments to strike. Therefore, the main strength of sumo wrestlers lies in their hands, and due to this, they have a huge mass. Yes, due to his experience in such games, Im understood that he only needed to find the right moment to strike. And now, the only and best moment has come for a strike that could decide the outcome of the battle. And the blow was as successful as possible. The attacking hooligan was lying on the floor unconscious, and this action frightened the other guys. Donggu didn't understand how he did it all this way. In general, it was difficult for him to believe that he did it with his own hands. Yes, just smiled arrogantly and said that he told him to trust him. A further order was heard to deal with the others, and Donggu immediately flew into the other two hooligans. Having flown up to them, he began to beat the guys with a huge number of sharp movements of his palms. The guys could only scream in pain and did not understand what was happening. One of them is already lying on the floor in an unconscious state, and the second of them was overtaken by the last blows, and he was already flying to the floor. The boy still couldn't understand how he could do this with his own hands and was in a state of shock. He was as happy as possible from the fact that he defeated each of the bullies with his own hands. But then their main enemy appeared, who was already advancing on the guy, shouting that he had no right to do this and calling him names. The bully was wildly infuriated that his questions were ignored because he runs this school. The guy was incredibly scared by what he heard, but Da-im supported him and said that these were just provocations. Yes, Im supported the guy in every possible way and said that they would be able to cope with everything. The system notification reported that if you stomp your foot, morale will rise and the damage from the skill will rise. The guy did as the system said. His eyes seemed to roll back into his head. He screamed, and his expression was one of rage. This even scared and amazed the bully a little, who had previously been confident in his abilities. The system reported that the combat skill was used and the enhancement was affecting the guy. Red shadows emanated from him and rage burned in his soul and was expressed on his face. Yes. Im asked whether the guy's fear had disappeared, and he replied that there was nothing left of fear. Then a new order was heard and the guy flew into the attack. Everything was going great. One of the attacks overtook the enemy, and they were already thinking that they would succeed the first time. Yes, Im was already happy and was about to ask the slave to retreat, but he abruptly interrupted his words. The bully grabbed Donggu's hand and had no intention of letting go. Pekte, threateningly and holding the guy, asked how he dared to raise his hand to him. Donggu didn't understand why he couldn't pull his hand out, but then it dawned on both guys that the guy was simply heavier, and in sumo this is the main criterion. They now understood that the bully would not fall from one blow, and yes suggested that they hit him with their free hand in order to get out of the grip. But Pekte also heard this proposal and blocked the guy's second hand. Donggu was bent down with his head down, and the bully hit him on the back with his palm without interrupting the blows, holding the guy in this position. Yes, Im was very worried about the guy and tried to order him to get out, but for some reason, his orders didn't work. Pekte was determined to kill the boy because he could not tolerate such an attitude. Donggu was very frightened and knew how strong the blow would be, which almost overtook him, but he could not do anything about it. Afterwards, control over the guy returned to Da-im, and he asked if the guy was okay, and he tried to answer. He asked him to quickly get up and run because he could get hit again, but something was going wrong. Donggu honestly admitted that he was too afraid of Pekte, and that's why he couldn't get up. He was even shaking all over with fear. Yes, Ima was angry at the fact that the guy couldn't even get up to just run away. He didn't understand what was wrong with him. Seeing the whole situation, the guy understood that Donggu would not survive if he did not escape, and he had to make an important decision. He realized that if he tried to intervene, the guy would get into even more trouble since he would only anger the bully. But he was not going to just stand there. He understood the whole situation and asked Dong-gu to cover his eyes since he had a plan, but the guy only became more scared because he did not see what was happening. The guy believed that if he watched, he would definitely get another flight from Paek-tae. Afterwards, the guy did a kick to restore the effect of sumo, but Da-im asked not to open his eyes. Paek-tae believed that with his eyes closed, the guy would definitely not be able to do anything and was already swinging at him. But yes. Im thought through everything and suggested which side the blow should come from and how to dodge. He managed to dodge the blow and wanted to make a roundhouse strike with his palm, but then they grabbed him by the collar and he mechanically opened his eyes, either reflexively or out of great fear. And then Paek-tae was ready to strike again, and then the guy realized that Dong-gu was panicking again. Yes, I began to understand that the panic in the guy was much deeper than he initially thought, and for this reason, this state returned. Then some kind of system notification appeared that informed that the information about Dong-gu's injury had been updated and a choice had been made whether to reproduce it. Yes, I'm immediately asked to reproduce the memories, and the downloading of the fragment reflected in his eyes began. Dong-gu, as it turned out, was a very calm guy all his life who loved to be alone and read. At one point, this began to really irritate Paek-tae, who from time to time hit the guy on the back with nothing. Dong-gu asked why he was behaving this way because it hurt him, but the bully only replied that it was just a friendly blow. This happened everywhere and in the hallway during recess. Wherever he went and wherever he met Dong-gu, he always received a slap on the back. Even just sitting at his desk every day, he got the feeling more than once. But I always heard that these were just jokes and could not say anything against thinking the same way. And one day he decided to inform one of the teachers about this so that this information would be told to the class teacher who scolded Paek-tae. The bully didn't like this behavior and beat Dong-gu in the toilet, but not with slaps on the back. He also began to continue talking about how he was only joking and was very angry at the guy lying on the floor. The guy answered him that Paek-tae was overdoing it, and he became even more angry. The bully was so angry that he started beating the guy harder, saying that he wouldn't even be able to get up after his actions. Dong-gu could only endure the beating because he didn't know how he could avoid Paek-tae's wrath. He was so angry that he almost broke the guy's back and he was already lying face down on the floor. After his actions, the bully only said that he would make jokes at the guy every day, and Dong-gu only tried to crawl away from such a monster. That's how Yesim found out that the guy had been beaten throughout high school, and from time to time he had to wash the blood off his uniform. Dong-gu had to lie to his mother from time to time about how his uniform didn't need washing, because he didn't want to tell her about the beatings. His whole back and ribs were covered in abrasions, old and new, and this was a major problem in his life. A system notification appears indicating that the memory has been loaded. Da-im was shocked by this fragment of life and did not understand why Paek-tae allowed himself to behave like this. He decided that he would no longer stand on the sidelines and flew screaming at the bully, which surprised everyone. Da-im simply tore Dong-gu away from Paek-tae and rolled past him on the floor. The bully didn't understand why he was doing this, but the guy was definitely serious. But about what exactly? Yes, I'm just started tearing the guy's shirt, telling him to show his wounds. Dong-gu did not understand the guy's behavior and also did not notice that his shirt was already torn. The only thing that came to his mind was to cover himself a little while the guy tried to see if he had such injuries now. He believed that if the guy didn't have clothes on, Paek-tae wouldn't be able to grab onto anything, but the bully grabbed Da-im's own shirt. While the bully was dragging Da-im by the collar, he tried to support the guy and explained to him that he must overcome his fears himself. He said that if you stand in one place, nothing will change, and his faith is also for a reason. But faith alone is always too little. He told the story of how he was able to overcome his fear, which means that Dong-gu can too. He said that he would help, while at the same time flying on the floor at the hands of the bully. Da-im was very worried about his fear and could not fight it. But the guy understood that in this way he could try, and the system also issued information that combat skills would be temporarily enhanced if he used foot strike. Dong-gu immediately used the skill, and any fear disappeared from his eyes. He wanted to change. He promised himself to overcome any fear today and was ready to deal with Paek-tae with his own hands. Dong-gu was already flying with all his might at the bully with complete confidence in his abilities, which definitely hit him. Da-im praised the guy and ordered him to perform continuous palm strikes. The guy felt his strength and was ready to deliver his blows. Such behavior as before was not even visible. The bully grabbed his hair and grinned at the fact that the guy's lack of clothes wouldn't help. He was ready to strike, and no one expected such an outcome, but Da-im tried to support the guy. But this time, the guy's mood did not change. He was ready for anything and understood that he could not be stopped. Donggu was so angry that nothing stopped him. He was ready to tear this bully apart. Paektae didn't understand why the guy grabbed his hair. He was simply amazed at the different behavior. He tore the hair from his head and reported that this happened because of a bully. Paektae was surprised that the guy had been wearing a wig all this time, even sweating a little from such news. Daim was just as surprised but praised the guy for such determination. Now Donggu really started to look like a sumo wrestler since they had similar hairstyles. Something had definitely changed in his life. He was ready to take revenge and use the technique of continuous strikes with his palms. The blows were so fast that the hooligan lost his soul from such blows. The guy still continued his blows and was determined nothing would stop this guy. Watching from a distance, one could not even see the movements of his hands, only air curtains flying past. He was so fast. Donggu was filled with anger for what he had done in the past as a bully and didn't care about anything. And then the final blow is delivered, breaking through the wall with the bully's body, because the last blow should be the most powerful. Paektae clearly did not expect such an outcome of events, and with only marks on his face from the blows, lay unconscious. The guy's hands were also bruised from a large and prolonged process of blows. Even Daim was scared by the guy's anger, but he only tried to calm him. The guy, having come to his senses, drowned in his memories and realized that he was able to overcome his fears and the bully who had mocked him for so long. After recognizing himself as the winner, he only joyfully showed his strength. The bully was still unconscious, and the guy was very happy about his victory, which was even a little scary. Yes, Aim is immensely happy and surprised by such skills, even though they were under the influence of a buff. The guy, putting on the wig, thanked Daim, thinking that this was not his personal merit, but immediately heard in response that this was only his efforts. The guy began his story that, in fact, at the very last moment, the system reported that Donggu was not his slave because of a bug, which was the fact that the guy's last blow was delivered without any submission. The guy only now realized that all this time it was just his personal strength and nothing more. Yes, I tried to explain to him that most likely the guy will not be able to get rid of the scars on his back. But Donggu didn't care much. He was happy in the knowledge that he was able to overcome his fear with his own strength. His mental wound has definitely become smaller. System notifications came about his victory in the quest, in which he received 3,000 coins and 2,000 experience, as well as about increasing the player's level. Yes, Im was happy about the level up and wanted to learn about the new features as soon as possible. Another notification appeared in which it was reported that the store was now available to him, and he, of course, wanted to know about what might be there. He was surprised by so many products in the store and was about to get another collar. Here he was distracted by Donggu, who wanted to ask something important for himself. When Daim was ready to listen to him, he asked his question about whether he could remain his assistant, and a notification about updating the game mode immediately appeared. As the level increased, the assistant function appeared, which was completely free in its actions and did not require a collar. He realized that such a function did not require being a slave, and also understood that this did not require any resources, which was very interesting to him. Yes, I'm asked the guy if he really wanted this because it might not be safe, but the guy was confident. He explained that after a one-on-one fight, he is no longer afraid of these hooligans, and that's why he wants to help his friends. Yes, I'm appreciated this attitude and of course accepted this offer. Now Donggu began to be considered the guy's assistant in the game. Paektae woke up and tried with all his might to get to the guys, but he had so little strength that he couldn't even get to his feet. And this meant that the guy could easily be made a slave, which Yesim was going to do with great pleasure. All this time, there was a man wrapped in tape on the roof of the school who could not do anything. In fact, Kang Woo figured out how he could get rid of the shackles of the slavery game, but he didn't think through something. The consequences were not thought through. He sat sweating from the heat and regretted his decision since he'd confused himself so much that he could not get out. He was ready to do anything so as not to serve the man whom he humiliated, and even to sit here until they found him. At the same time of his thoughts, the door swings open and the hooligan's face is filled with a shocked state and a sharp desire to thank the person who found him. But something happens that Kang Woo didn't expect anymore. It was Paektae. Paektae was just as surprised to see his friend on the roof. Kang Woo was so happy to see his friend before his eyes that his smile was as if from ear to ear, because only he knew that the bully was here very often. But then Daim appeared before his eyes with an ominous smile, holding Paektae on a leash, and the guy honestly admitted to his friend that he was caught in the same way. The guy had not felt such anger as on this day for a long time because his slave ran away from him to some rooftop just to avoid orders. Seeing Daim's angry face, the bully was so scared that he almost fell out of his chair. The guy was so angry at the bully's prank because he specifically tied himself up just to disobey his orders. They suffered a lot from Dong-gu because of this. Yes, decided that he wanted to return Kang-woo to his past duties because before that he had to remove him from his slaves in order to get out of trouble. The bully cried when he saw this collar. He didn't want to return to this life at the beck and call of an ordinary guy. Yes, was already raising his hand to strike because the one who could be made a slave should be lying on the floor, plus he was wildly angry with this guy. The blow was more powerful than the last time. The cheek was smeared across the face just as all the tears scattered across the area. Kang-woo fell in an unconscious position, still tied to the chair, and the system reported that he was again becoming the guy's slave. Yes, he was determined to make sure they paid for this day, but he also had some important business that needed to be done first. As they walked towards the classroom, the guy was happy in his heart that he was able to catch the two most powerful bullies of this school, Paek-tae and Kang-woo. In class, the guys discussed that Yesim was definitely in an inadequate state since he thought that he could win one of the hooligans. But they were more amused by the fact that he called one of the hooligans, thinking that he again wanted to grab him on the head. The girl sitting next to him didn't say a word. She just watched with incomprehension as the guys discussed it. She asked her friend sitting at her desk if something had happened in the morning because she was absent at that moment. A friend told the girl that while she was in the teacher's room, Daim tried to fight back the bullies and was dragged into the toilet. She got scared and said that she should have immediately told one of the teachers about this. The girls said that they informed the teachers about this, but they did not listen to them. One of her friends asked if she knew a guy named Da-im. The third girl reminded her that Suji is the head girl, and she was her deputy, and the girl said with surprise that she had completely forgotten about it. Then everyone turned their attention to the corridor in which something was clearly happening, but it was only visible that someone rushed past. At that moment, Da-im, who, according to the boys' assumptions, should not have been alive, entered the class, and this, of course, caused surprise. The guy was determined to announce something. For this reason, he shouted to the whole class. The guys were at a loss because Paek-tae had not let anyone go until that moment. Just in case, they came up with a plan to deal with this guy. But then two hooligans appeared in the classroom carrying the unconscious bodies of three more. They didn't treat them like friends, they just threw them on the floor, putting the whole class in an incomprehensible position. Those two guys who just 5 minutes ago condemned Da-im for such arrogance could not even imagine such an outcome of events. The guy continued to attract all possible attention to his statement because he was saying that violence would no longer be welcomed in their class. No one could believe that now there would be no violence in their class because it was easier for everyone to think that this was just some kind of joke. The hooligans slowly began to regain consciousness and did not understand how they ended up in the classroom because they had just been in the toilet. Seeing Daim nearby, the guys began to think what he was up to again and what he was doing. Having fully woken up, the guys tried to fly into the guy and find out what Daim had done to them. But their fists were immediately intercepted, which is why the guy didn't even twitch before. Daim smiled sarcastically as he watched his slaves overpraise the attack on him, and he could only wait for the reaction. The first thing he did was make the guys kneel, apparently to apologize to the whole class. Kang-woo and Paek-tae immediately twisted the boys and forced them to their knees. Yes, continued his speech that there will be no more violence in this class and everyone should know this. He also began to say that each of the bullies apologizes for their bad behavior. He continued to say that all bullies will be held accountable for their actions, not just Paek-tae and Kang-woo. But everyone was definitely shocked by the last statement and even broke out in sweat because the guy said that they would apologize to everyone and compensate for the damage. He confidently stated that no one would bully anyone again. Dong-gu believed in his friend and trusted these words as much as possible. Yes, I warned the class that they would forget about any violence. The guys from the class were shocked that the hooligans actually admitted to bullying and bowed their heads, hiding their eyes. They also accepted punishment for their antics. The punishment was to go out and walk through the corridors of the school with inscriptions about how wrong they were and apologies. Yes, I'm also personally ensured that all money and belongings were returned to the owners. After this, the guys beat themselves with exactly the same force as they beat those who were humiliated. The next punishment was to run as long as all those who were humiliated ran from them. Yes, did everything to make them feel the same way as all those who were once subjected to humiliation. For example, forced to wash the floor several times. At one point, someone distracted him from his fun without any further request, but the guy responded. Then, the unexpected happened. The guys brought banana milk to Daim and asked if the guy was very tired. The guys wanted to thank Daim for the fact that there was no more violence in the class and honestly admitted to the guy that they didn't believe that he would succeed. Yes, I'm like the comparison of hooligans with garbage most of all, and the guys also continued to court him. The guys apparently had a plan to rescue their friends from captivity, and they began to ask the guy if he was tired of chasing them, and they also said that they were always ready to do it for him. But what no one expected, Yesim turned around with a statement that it was really difficult for him alone because he didn't have the strength to get rid of people like these two guys. The guy explained, because with his popularity, everyone began to come running, thinking that it was so easy. He even compared all those who came running to flies and said to himself that he was like honey. In fact, Yesim understood that these two had done something, but they began to deny it and say that everything would be ready tomorrow. Yes, Im was very angry and said that if he suddenly gets caught by them again, they will do everything the same as the hooligans. The girls noticed that the atmosphere in the class had become completely different, and changes in Daim's behavior were also noticeable. They began to wonder if he could hide all this time the fact that he could fight, but then why did he need all this? Immediately the girls noticed that he began to be attractive to them. They considered him an idol. One of the girls did not agree with the opinion that he looks cute, but added that he looks more cool. Her friends were very surprised by this particular girl's reaction and wanted to ask her because she had never reacted like that to any of the guys. The girl immediately began to make excuses, but the girls said that there was no need to panic and they had not even started to say anything yet. The school continued to live an ordinary life because only the person running it had changed. Yes, he praised the hooligans with the same attitude and informed them that they had done a good job today. Immediately changing his face, the guy continued to report that tomorrow everyone will continue to improve the school. Afterwards, he sent everyone on their way and was very pleased, but the hooligans looked very tired. They just walked and talked about why Pektai and Kangwoo obey him. At this time, Donggu was fighting with Pektai. Daim also decided to let them go home, and they said goodbye until tomorrow. Pektai also decided to quietly run away from this guy. He began to slowly leave. But he didn't succeed. The guy immediately caught the bully by the ear and dragged him back because he was the one who wouldn't let go. Yes, Im reminded the guy that he and Donggu got into trouble precisely because of him and he must bear responsibility. He decided to punish him so that he would learn the lesson for the rest of his life and would not allow himself to behave like that again. Kangwoo began to mention to Daim that he himself said that there would be no more violence in the class, and it turns out that he cannot be beaten. Yes, I'm answered that this is not violence because this is just a lesson for the slave who went against the will of the master, so today he will be punished for insubordination. When Kangwoo first met Daim, he was just really bored in the high school library. Kangwoo just noticed a target for mockery. Now he only cared about this guy. Approaching him, he lifted the guy by the scruff of the neck and told him that from that day on he would be a slave. And so began Daim's difficult life and all the bullying and beatings, which is why he was so angry at all the hooligans. This lasted for such a long period of time that the guy even began to forget his previous life. In the end, the guy himself didn't want anything at all. He just remained sitting and enduring it all. But now everything was different. Now the main character in the mockery was Kangwoo. Now he is already standing in the middle of the street in pink leggings and definitely hates Daim for such actions. Kangwoo was unbearably angry with the guy for this. He considered it too mean. He asked Daim to cancel such an order, but he only replied that it was not worth wrapping himself with tape on the roof. He did not understand the bully's aggression, since everything he does to him is only what they have been doing to him for many years. Having committed a crime, you always have to pay for them, Daim added, and asked the guy to run for a bun in exactly this form. Kangwoo was only worried about the fact that there was a girl working there who was perfect for him. But the order had already been applied to him. The girl was very happy to see the bully, but something slowed her down. She was shocked by his appearance, and while he was bleeding, he tried to pretend that this was his usual image, realizing how stupid he looked now. The girl fearfully began to kick him out of the store, thinking that he was some kind of pervert. But Kangwoo tried to justify himself to her, saying that she simply understood everything wrong. With tears in his eyes, he ran back to Daim, shouting that he would definitely pay for the bun a little later. Yes. Im just laughed at what was happening, and the bully understood that now there was definitely no future with the girl. But then the guy looked at what Kangwoo brought him from the store and was clearly dissatisfied with something. He threw the bun back at the bully and said with great anger that he didn't ask to buy a pizza roll. Kangwoo, having been hit in the face, was clearly very unhappy and was in pain. because this is not the most pleasant feeling." His face expressed all the aggression of this world, but he could not do anything. "Yes, I'm just continued to say that he was returning only what he had always experienced himself, and that's normal." Then Kang-woo realized that the guy really intended to repeat everything that was done to him. System notifications with orders kept pouring in one after another, and the guy also forced the bully to run for another loaf of bread. Kang-woo was simply begging for salvation, but the guy continued. Now Da-im is already sitting on the bully as if on a chair and enjoying the refreshing effect. Yes, Im was so happy that he had this ability because it allows him to take revenge. He was even a little offended to waste such a beautiful thing on such bastards. Then he remembered that Dong-gu is his assistant, not a slave, and thought about something. He thought about whether other people could become the same helpers for him or not. After all, if it's true that he can command all the beauties of the school, and not only, the guy is really very interested in this outcome of events. Or he can simply make any rich man his slave and live a happy life with money. He dreamed about whether he could make a slave of the president and rule the country. The dreams were wonderful for him. This outcome was ideal. He immediately thought that he was simply wasting his time on these hooligans and this would not bring any success. He decided to start now, but then the unexpected happened. The guy didn't understand how this could happen. He was shaking with surprise. A girl of unprecedented beauty walked in front of him. But she was not the only thing that shocked the guy so much. At that time, a rich man was also driving nearby in a very, very expensive car. But all this seemed to have evaporated because he was simply too daydreaming about this, or not only, the guy simply did not see information about anyone other than hooligans, which infuriated him wildly. The guy didn't understand why it was so unfair because he was able to subjugate Dong-gu, who was also not a bully. Then some small awareness of the operation of the entire application began to dawn on him. He decided to test his theory, leaving Kang-woo to simply wait for his return, although he begged to be allowed to go home. He rushed with great speed to some place, expecting to find someone there. He didn't understand why everyone had been so looming in front of him before, but now he couldn't find any of them. But then he seemed to see what he wanted. His legs stopped. Yes, I'm really found what he wanted, but what exactly was it? He found himself in front of a crowd of hooligans, and he did not put it in a very good way in his way. Immediately, a notification appears from the system to destroy all the hooligans, and it turns out that the guy's theory really works. Yes, immediately realized that he had gotten himself into trouble. He immediately realized that the game was called buller hunting. Where was his head before? It was already a little late, but he realized that he could only control those who were somehow connected with the attacks at school. The guys attacked the guy threateningly for his words. Dupei was the leader of the gang and ordered Da-im to be dragged to them because it was just getting boring. The system reported that it could show detailed information about the quest, but what interested him most was the name of the gang, so he decided to look at the information. He was also informed that the information would be shown on behalf of the victim of this gang, and playback began. An ordinary high school student named Jin-gu just dreamed of becoming a football player, but one day, everything changed. One of the hooligans of this gang called the guy to him for something, and of course he unsuspectingly headed in that direction. As soon as Jin-gu approached him, he was hit in the ribs at the same moment. The guy asked why Dupei was doing this to him, but he told him to shut up and not move. The two hooligans agreed to deal with Jin-gu and watch where he screams the most, because at whose blow he screams the most will be the winner. The guy asked if it was too simple, although he initially liked the idea, after which he was the first to begin to complete this challenge by attacking the guy. And when he finished in just one blow, he told his comrade that this is exactly how it should be done. He asked Dupei for the promised 10,000 for the victory, but he only remained silent. The guy was already completely exhausted, but the bully didn't want to give up his money so easily. His friend reminded him that they only had one attempt each. He asked Jin-gu if it hurt him, and he asked him to stop doing it. But the bully didn't want to give up and grabbed the guy's leg because he needed to make him scream even louder, which meant that it should be quite unpleasant for him. He wrapped the guy up and began to do what he had planned. Despite the fact that Jin-gu begged him to stop, he continued. Even the second guy was shocked by the way that guy treated people, because he really broke the guy's leg and asked for his reward. Since Jin-gu's leg was injured and he remained permanently disabled, the guy had to forget about any football. Dupei was arrested for 7 days and was only happy with this outcome of events because he won the argument. This was the essence of the quest, because even after the arrest, the guy did not change his behavior at all. The system reported rewards in the form of 3,000 experience and 4,000 coins. To do this, it was necessary to defeat the gang leader and force him to confess to all crimes. Yes, was surprised by the guy's cruelty, and he also realized that he was seeing the playing field, this means that with the help of this game, he must eradicate school crimes completely and not just subjugate bullies. He liked this outcome of events. Of course, he didn't understand a little why he got such an ability, but he was ready to do it. Yes, understood that he could not survive alone and began to shout Kang Woo's name at the top of his voice and call him for help. His screams could be heard all over the street. Perhaps it even unsettled the hooligans themselves a little. Yes, just stood there and waited, and one of the hooligans really got mad at this and was already swinging at the guy to hit him. As soon as the bully's hand was near the guy's head, someone immediately intercepted it. Yes, smiled sarcastically because he knew that Kang Woo was standing behind him and nothing would happen to him, and the bully was quite scared of this outcome of events. A system notification appeared indicating that the order was applied to the hooligan. Kang Woo was angry because normally he was a loser, but as soon as the guy needed physical strength, he immediately called him. Dupei did not understand what kind of guy had dragged himself to their place because he was not familiar to anyone from all those who were there. Da-im informed everyone that this was his slave, which made Kang Woo ashamed for such a performance. He stopped being so ashamed and asked the gang what kind of reprisal they would like, giving them a choice of 2 methods. The first was to put everyone in a row, and the second was to slam them into the wall. The guys didn't understand what the guy was telling them and sat in surprise on the sight without even moving, but the next moment they burst into laughter at such a statement in their direction because they had never seen such impudent people. The leader of the gang personally approached the hooligan and asked whether he knew where they had come and who they were. Yes, joked and called the gang Dupei, comparing it to the bald head of the leader, but the gang was called by the name of the leader, and this behavior wildly infuriated the hooligan. The whole gang realized that the guy really knew them, and everyone was angry with him. They told the guy that even prayers wouldn't save him after this. Dupei had an A rank, unlike the other 6 who only had a B rank. They were already ready to attack Da-im and Kang Woo. Kang Woo was so angry that yesterday he became the guy's slave again that his seriousness was amazing. He went with a wild attitude to make these guys the same slaves as he was and was ready to do anything for this, because yesterday he actually wanted to commit suicide. His personal rank was AAA, which was the highest rank, so Da-im's opinion was wrong that both of them would not survive this battle. Kang Woo was ready to destroy everyone just to get rid of these shackles. He was ready to start the battle, but for some reason the gang slowed down and did not take any action. Dupei just laughed at the guy because he personally called himself a slave. The whole gang thought that recently more and more eccentrics had begun to appear. With the phrase that after Kang Woo the gang would obey them, they began to attack with the whole crowd. Even as a child, Dupei had a large physique, and this was always very noticeable. For these reasons, he was never afraid of anything, because everyone was rather afraid of him personally. All of his so-called friends were weaker than him, and were constantly bullied for these reasons. After all, even after he dealt with one guy, he did not plan to stop. He was not afraid of anything. Even the law could not stop him. This is how this guy's world was built. But today, for the first time in his life, Dupei began to feel fear because his gang was falling at the hands of some unknown guy. They simply could not resist him. Da-im arrived in the same shock and fear because Kang Woo was never as cruel as Dupei, but was superior to everyone. The gang leader could not even think that each of his guys was so weak because he was selective towards each of those who were with him. Each was hit with one blow and lay unconscious, but Kang Woo stood completely untouched. Dupei watched this but did not want to appear weak and, despite all his fear, made a decision. He flew to attack Kang Woo, telling him that he is much stronger than all those who are in the gang with him, and it will not be as easy with him. Was his blow straight to the head, or was he simply given the opportunity to strike? The leader asked where such a person came from because he was the strongest. Kang Woo really reeled from the blow, but everything was not so simple. Dupei expected the bully to immediately fall unconscious, but something did not go according to his plan. Kang Woo, lowering his eyes, said that he doesn't like tickling, and this definitely unsettled the gang leader. One blow was enough for him to throw Dupei away and cause him enormous damage. Kang Woo was unbearably angry for this gang's behavior because no one could create even minimal resistance to him. His anger was so strong that he, with a statement not to interfere with him, struck a second blow. And then the third, still asking him not to get in the way. The guy, in pain, only managed to fly from blow to blow, but Kang Woo's anger was enormous. The last blow was so strong that it threw Dupei several meters away. If it weren't for the angle, the leader would probably still be flying, but the leader surprisingly remained conscious even after such blows. Dupay was shocked by such strength and did not understand why Kang Woo was like this and where he came from. There was so much anger in this hooligan that he approached the leader and told him to get up because he was not finished with him yet. The street lived its own quiet life, but what was surprising were the actions that happened next because Dupay himself asked the guy to stop on his knees so that he would no longer experience blows of such force. The completely beaten gang leader sat and said how wrong he was in his actions and that he would admit all his actions. And in return, he only asked not to beat him anymore. But Kang Woo found it very difficult to stop and was already swinging for the next blow until a small hand appeared in front of the bully's face. It was Da-im who stopped all the bully's actions with just one word. Dupay was glad that this guy appeared in front of him and that he would no longer be bullied with blows of incredible force. Yes, Im was already hovering over the leader with the collar and asking if he would go into captivity just like Kang Woo, but he simply did not understand what was happening here. After a certain period of time, a system notification appeared that Da-im had captured 7 bullers. Here they are, all 7 of them sitting on their knees in front of Da-im and Kang Woo, waiting for what will happen to them next. Yes, I began to try and test new functions because the collar was only on the leader and forced them to make a calculation and raise their hands. Dupay still didn't understand why they were all so subservient to the unknown guy. Then the guy noticed the hooligan's giggles and decided to order him to perform some actions. Yes, I'm forced the guy to admit that he is an obedient dog and say that he will do everything. The bully was just trying to shut his mouth and understand why he was exactly repeating all the orders of this guy. Yes, I could have completed the quest by now, but he was only thinking about it. But then a more terrible idea came to his mind, which he of course wanted to do. Yes, raised the leader to his feet, calling him an octopus, but he did not understand why he was so subservient to this guy. Then he ordered to tell about each of the crimes committed by Dupay. The leader immediately began a detailed account of each of the crimes. His crimes included theft of motorcycles in the amount of 5 times, as well as theft and much more. He also said that he once committed a group attack and much more. Yes-im at the same time listened to everything that was told. Then he went up to the leader and hit him on the cheek for everything he had done. After Da-im ordered everyone to stand up and intended to re-educate each of them. He put each of the guys in sparring, but the guy who was put against the leader did not want to beat him. In his thoughts, Dupay understood that if he was hit even once, he would simply be obliged to bury him. But his thoughts were interrupted by a blow to the jaw because his subordinate was controlled by Da-im, who was amused by this. The guy also continued to direct blow after blow, and the one he controlled tried to apologize for all the blows to Dupay. Yes, Im played with these blows so much that he allowed himself to make blows to the temple and the like, and his face also expressed madness. Dupay can't resist and was just waiting for the moment when this would all end. As it turned out, in the past, the guy pitted his 2 friends against each other in the same things. In the past, Dupay was the same observer and every blow brought him incredible pleasure. Yes, I'm only managed to say that this was all just for the sake of education, and Kang Woo only considered him crazy and stood on the sidelines thinking that the massacre would end in death. Someone is already sitting on Dupay's neck, and he is only thinking with a pitiful face about how this could end quickly. As it turned out, Da-im and Kang Woo sat on the shoulders of the gang guys and moved around that way. All that applied to Dupay was his personal means of entertainment, and the guy knew it. Only for this reason, now the hooligans were a personal way of transportation. After that, Da-im lined everyone up and kicked cans at the hooligans, announcing that whoever he hit would be ripped off. The can ultimately hit Dupay's head, who seemed to have already suffered that day. Everything was a reminder of how difficult it was for everyone who was surrounded by this hooligan. Yes, I'm tried very hard on something and was very focused. Kang Woo tried to suggest in which direction to move, but the guy was annoyed because he was so focused that he was dripping with sweat. Yes-im finally finished his work and was ready to show his creation to the world, calling this creation magnificent. Dupay was clearly not happy with what was done to him, but could not resist it. The bully could not stand it, and already declared that everything he was doing was just kindergarten, and begged him to finish it already. Yes, I could not stand such an attitude towards something that he had been working on for a very long time. For this reason, the guy was already getting a slap in the face. Afterwards, the guy was mocked a little more, and Da-im decided that this could be the end of it. Dupay did not understand why his body did not obey, and was clearly unhappy with this. He hated this submission. Sitting humiliated for the first time, the guy thought how he could get rid of this state of submission and why he became a slave. The whole gang was sitting in front of Da-im, whom he was glad to announce that their education was over. Each of the gang was happy with this outcome of events. They already thought that they would be released. Dupi already understood that if they were released, he would need to run as far as possible and not catch the eye of Da-im again. But after that, the guy said that this was not a real punishment, which made each of the guys, especially the leader, in shock and did not understand what would happen next. Everyone was wondering if this was not a punishment, what they were doing to him all this time, and what the real punishment would be then. Yes, I told him that in fact he was just having fun because all the fun would come next. Dupi didn't understand what could be worse, and the guy told him that every action they took would be punished by law because he exists for a reason. Yes, I'm expressed complete seriousness and informed each of the guys that now they would really feel everything that everyone they had once mocked experienced. The system reported that an order was applied to the gang to cheerfully surrender themselves to the police. The gang marched to the police department in one unit and with such great enthusiasm. Da-im was happy because almost the entire task was completed, and Kang-woo was amazed at the guy's actions because in this way he forced him to confess to every crime to the police. The system also informed the guy that the next quest had been completed and he received a reward for it. The system also reported that the guy's player level had also increased and he was now 3rd. Yes, I'm understood that the 2 worst hooligans were under his power and there was only one person left whom he wanted to catch. The guy was happy about such work and told Kang-woo that tomorrow their plans would be even more ambitious. The bully was angry and insulted Da-im deep down, but he agreed with this statement. So the next day came, the same class number 1, and the sounds of boiling work came from that day. The hooligans were scrubbing the class as hard as they could, and at the same moment they were thinking about what would await them today. Even Yes-im, listening to the sounds of the tidy as a melody, thought about what could be done today. An unknown guy appeared who was simply walking along the corridors of the school. The guy himself expected what would happen. He had not appeared at this school for a very long time. Sharply and in one movement, he threw open the doors of the classroom but had not yet crossed the boundaries of the office. His first words were a greeting with insult, and his smile expressed hatred. Even Da-im was scared because he realized who entered the class. Kang-woo seemed to be stuck in the man's return to school. He did not express any emotion. The guys were surprisingly happy that he returned because he had been suspended before. He said that his father was able to negotiate for him to return to school a week earlier. Yes, I'm understood that he had completely forgotten about his removal and lost his vigilance. He didn't expect that the guy because of whom Da-im had once become a slave, so anger crushed him. The guy clearly loved Jia very much, but she clearly did not like his company. Taehyuk was also that hooligan. Everyone was afraid of him. Not only boys, but also girls also experienced great fear. Yes, I'm snapped at the guy, telling him to take his hands off the girl, and then the following happened. Taehyuk asked if he had heard the truth before that Da-im was trying to restore order in the classroom. This frightened the guy. His eyes were covered with fear and amazed at what was happening. He did not understand how he knew everything. Taehyuk didn't understand why the guy was trying to give him orders. In fact, the guy was frightened rather not by the words, but by the rank that was assigned to each of the hooligans. Yes-im was amazed at the S rank because he did not understand why his rank was so high. This was the highest rank that could exist, and its powers were immeasurable. He was given a comparison of the 2 slaves and then realized that the intelligence, agility, and fighting skills were higher than Kang-woo. Taehyuk was a boxing champion in high school, which is probably why they were so different. Da-im wondered if Kang-woo and Baek-tae would be able to defeat this bully without any fighting skills. The boy immediately realized that he could help them with his control and they would definitely be able to cope with such a bully all together. Moreover, they will be 2 for 1, so they will definitely succeed. The guy sent Penti to attack. Yes, I could only hope for victory and worry about everyone who was involved in this. Pengto already saw the fist flying at him, and Taehyuk in turn was amazed that the hooligans lost to him. The fist was already flying at the guy's head, and this was clearly not the most pleasant thing that had happened to the guy lately. He began to shudder at the thought that the guys weren't using their heads and called them sick. Taehyuk continued his attacks and humiliations towards the guy because submitting to someone who was a slave was amazing. But most of all, the bully didn't like that his own friend dared to attack him. This was the main reason for his anger. For the same reason, the last blow for Baek-tae was the strongest, and he fainted. Yes, I was amazed at how the bully fell in 3 seconds from this guy, and the system also reported that he was no longer able to fight and his powers were cancelled. Kang-woo didn't know who the guy in front of him was, but he was ready to attack at any moment. Yes, Im told him that it was not worth attacking now. Taehyuk was initially very strong, and the guy realized that there was no need to attack him first. Yes, I began to understand that this guy could not be defeated just like that, and he recalculated his strength by going on the attack so quickly. Taehyuk, in turn, was very interested in how this guy made two class bullies obey him. Yes, he understood that the moment was turning out to be very bad and he needed to come up with an answer so as not to aggravate the situation. But he didn't know what he could come up with. He was very scared and rushed about in his thoughts. Taehyuk was at the limit of his emotions because he perceived silence as being ignored and was already swinging at Da-im. Then Da-im came up with an idea. Although it was stupid, he had no choice but to do such a thing. He began to play out the situation that it was all just a joke and it was all being filmed, and he also showed a heart. Taehyuk was amazed and didn't know what he could possibly answer to this because the guy really surprised him. But not only he was surprised, but also all those who were in the office at the same moment did not understand what Da-im's words meant. Everyone began to wonder if it was true that there had been a hidden camera all this time and all this subjugation was a lie. One of the hooligans shouted at the guy and asked what he was doing, but he just made a heart and trembled. Yes-im, being able to convey thoughts to them, asked them to play along in order to survive and think about a plan to defeat Taehyuk. Each of the hooligans immediately began to burst into laughter, pretending that it was really all a game. Taehyuk asked if it was true that they were all pretending just to surprise him and meet him like that. Pouring into sweat, Kang-woo told him that they really just decided to celebrate the guy's expulsion from school, and he seemed to even believe it. Taehyuk really called this outcome of events absurd, because everything would be so strange if it were true. Yes, at that time, he was playing the role of a slave, and this infuriated him incredibly, because for the bully, he was just a chair, and he also asked if he really liked it. Taehyuk was annoyed that the guy wasn't answering him, and he in turn tried to explain himself and pretend that they were really just pranking him and he could apologize for his joke. The bully slapped the guy in the butt and said that he really knows how to suck up. Taehyuk turned to the guy and asked him to change everything back, making everything the same as yesterday but in reverse. Yes, Im didn't understand what was required of him and began to remember what he did yesterday, and the bully only asked to return everything the same as it was. Yes, Im understood what was required of him, and, standing up just like yesterday in front of the whole class, began his statement. But his statement was different, because now he told the whole class that he was returning any violence to their school. Each of those present was shocked, and began to think that the things said before about the hidden camera were true. Everyone thought that Da-im would continue to be bullied, and he also announced that he would compensate for the damage caused to the school. The last thing he said was that school bullying would continue again and again. Yes, Im uttered the most terrible words for himself, informing him that the bullying was returning, covering himself with sweat at that moment, because for him, it was just as scary. Taehyuk burst into laughter listening to all the words the guy said. He was amazed at such statements and how the guys from the class reacted to it. Yes. After that, Im also went around the whole school telling him that he was a loser, and the whole school thought that they really began to bully him again, also not understanding what was happening in their class. Then he went after all those who had their money returned yesterday, and of course no one returned it because it was their money. Afterwards, Da-im was forced to beat himself in the same way as he had forced each of the hooligans before. Afterwards, he was an errand guy and realized that he had become their slave again. Everything was returning to normal. He brought food to Taehyuk and understood that everything that was happening now would not lead to anything good. And the bully in turn liked that everything was the same as before, but he praised Da-im. The guy asked to leave, but the hooligan asked where he wanted to have lunch, and then he deliberately dropped his bun with the words that the dog should also be fed. The smaller hooligans remembered how this guy had always been and laughed incredibly, realizing that he remained the same. Yes, he was annoyed by this attitude, but he understood that he could not defeat this bully yet. Taehyuk was annoyed that the guy was trying to ignore his orders because the guy still hadn't eaten his treats. Da-im tried to convince the bully and said that he would definitely eat everything, and reached for the bun lying on the floor. But as soon as the hand was almost on the bun, the bully overtook this hand with his foot, and the guy did not understand why. Taehyuk immediately asked why the guy's hand was reaching for the bun, because dogs don't eat with their hands. Yes, Im was unaccustomed to such an attitude towards him and was wildly angry at the resumption of such an attitude towards him. He remembered how, as a child, Taehyuk also forced him to eat a bun on the playground. At that time, emotions were almost the same as now, but now Da-im understood that he could resist it. Also at that time, two of those who urged him to eat from the floor, and it was funny for them. Remembering his past, the guy was amazed at such an attitude. There were only insults in his head. But he really started eating it, and the guys laughed at this and told him to eat more with appetite and a lot. Yes, biting the bun once again, he said that his revenge would be greater and it would definitely overtake him. Kang-woo suffered the most because of his anger at others, the guy mocked him. The guy scolded the bully for not fighting with him, and Kang-woo in turn reminded him that he really wanted to, but he stopped him himself. Yes, I told him that he still didn't understand that he wouldn't have won, and the guy really thought that he had already lost his mind. The guy reminded the bully that he lost to Tae-hyuk at the beginning of this semester and nothing would change now, and he claimed that he could fight more correctly. Yes, I was surprised because he saw the statistics, and the bully has nothing but physical characteristics, and he in turn reported that if he tried, he would kill everyone. However, the guy understood that Tae-hyuk was on a different level because he had always been involved in martial arts. Yes, I thought everything would be as simple as before, but I began to understand that even a team battle would not withstand this bully, and they needed another way. The guy understood that the first thing he needed to do was to at least equalize Kang-woo and Tae-hyuk in strength. A new task appeared before Da-im, which was called cleansing, and for this task, as many as 40,000 coins were given if this task was completed in 3 days. The guy was excited about this task because it could make their preparation for a serious opponent easier. In a store with that many coins, it was fashionable to buy anything, and by defeating 50 people, one could also increase Kang-woo's characteristics. Even the bully was glad that because of the task, he would be able to defeat Tae-hyuk and also receive many rewards. Yes, Im said that in 3 days, they would only need to defeat 50 people and nothing bothered him at that moment. As soon as Kang-woo heard their new task, he was amazed because he did not understand how he could defeat so many opponents in such a short time. The hooligan was also interested in where they would find such a huge number of people in such a short period of time, but the guy already had a plan for this. Da-im had 2 guys who would help them find such a huge number of people. The guys clearly did not expect that they could be used in this way because they were the first targets of the task. Min-hyuk and Chan-ho were friends since childhood and were exactly the same people who also loved to bully Da-im. These 2 guys had very different hobbies but were able to become friends only because they had similar character traits. Seeing the mockery of other children, their thoughts were not about how to somehow help those children, but rather, often seeing humiliation and fights, even more likely just the way they obeyed, they thought that in this way, everything could be achieved. Seeing that with a request for money and a subsequent blow to the face, the guy got what he asked for right away. They did not experience feelings of envy, not feelings of regret or anything like that. They really wanted power, but they were both too weak for that and decided for these reasons to act differently. Approaching the guy after they saw another guy extorting money, they decided that they would do exactly extortion and just the 2 of them so that it would look more threatening. At that moment, the first person they tried to extort money from was not that he was afraid of them, but rather he was wondering why he owed them. The guys immediately began to take advantage of the fact that the guy was afraid of one of the hooligans and threatened him with this man. For this reason, the guy gave up and the hooligans realized how they could continue their activities. They spent their very first money on food, and this is how they achieved what they wanted. Their posts always talked about how cool they are and that many are simply not worthy of them. But all this only went against them because now they are surrounded by many hooligans. The guys expected that they were simply being played and could not set them up so much they almost cried from fear. And Da-im was happy that he was finally able to achieve his goal after a long period. The guys were only trying to escape from a huge number of their haters because if they were caught, they would most likely be in great pain. Kang-woo was amazed at how Da-im was amused by all this since he thought those 2 guys were just bait. The guy was already scaring everyone. He said that he was very worried and said that he was starting to hunt for sheep. The hooligans who ran after the bait lost them and tried in every way to guess where those boys had gone. Yes, Im went out to 3 guys who fell into their trap. They were from Class C. The guys didn't understand what was happening and thought that Da-im was some ordinary hooligan and they already wanted to destroy him. But behind them, Kang-woo, angry at this world, appeared, which made each of the guys stunned. The system reported that 3 out of 50 were destroyed and the guys were not going to end it there. Kang-woo realized that it was very simple and clarified whether the guys would also be bait. After all, he can cope on his own. Yes, Im offered to check the effectiveness of the potion that he had just bought for Kang-woo. As soon as the potion was used, the bully reported that he felt a surge of strength, and the system reported that his stamina had also increased. The system also reported that the effect would work for 2 hours, and Yesim suggested continuing after using the effect. After a short period of time, the system reported that 5 people had been killed, and during these fights it reported that some characteristics had been increased. Yes, at this time they only had time to give orders, and the system only had time to report how many people were destroyed. The system only had time to report how many people had fallen, and there were already 10 of them. The guys only managed to attract a huge number of bullies and run away to them. Also, at any time the system reported an increase in any characteristics of Kang Yu. Yes, he still only had time to give orders, and the system was already reporting the destruction of 14 people. Here are a few more hooligans lying around fainting, and the guy receives a notification that the second stage of the test is over, which means that 20 people have already died. Yes, all that was left for him was to give orders and see a notification about how Kang Wu's skills, strength, and endurance were increasing. The bully simply began to enjoy his actions and each destruction. Yes, I'm also enjoyed what was happening and only had time to give orders. Each of those who came received the cherished destruction, and 27 people were already defeated. It already feels like the end of the day on the street, but what will happen next and what our main characters look like now? Da-im and Kang Wu were very exhausted and surprised at how much they were able to do today. The guy was amazed and very tired because in one day they managed to defeat such a huge number of hooligans. A huge number of defeated hooligans were lying along the street. They were everywhere and extremely different. Some were in uniform and some were wearing a regular t-shirt. Also, each of the hooligans had a different build. Yes, I saw a system notification that the 4th stage of the test had been completed, which meant that they had killed 40 people that day. Yes, Im and Kang Wu, after examining each of the fallen, simply realized that they could not cope anymore. They simply fell exhausted because the effect of the potion had already worn off, and Da-im had spent his strength giving orders. The guys working with the bait were also passed out because they were also very tired, and the guy decided to call it a day for today. Yes, Im decided to increase some of Kang Wu's characteristics using coins, and everything was successful. Now the bully has become closer in strength and endurance to his main opponent at the moment, that is Tai-hyuk. Da-im also decided to buy 3 items from the store that were more necessary and spent 12,000 coins. But Da-im continued to look at something in the store and realized that they would still have to complete this quest. He needed one more item for which he did not have enough coins, but he believed that this item would play a major role in this battle. Yes-im was so serious about defeating this bully for the first time. Even Kang Wu was surprised by such determination and decided to ask why the guy was so serious. And the guy only answered that it all started with this bully. He believed that Tae-hyuk was to blame for all the problems. Yes, I decided to tell my story. He said that he was very poor back then. The guy had just started school and he had quite a few friends in those days. Previously, no one could be embarrassed by poverty. Everyone communicated only because they had similar interests. He tried to explain to Kang Wu that at that time he was a very diligent student with a lot of friends. The guys first met in the 5th grade of elementary school. He transferred to them in the middle of the semester. Since he had not studied since the beginning of the year, it was very difficult for him to get along with anyone, and Da-im always paid attention to this. At some point, Tae-hyuk began to bully Soo-jin, and this began to irritate everyone. Yes, was just trying to stand up for the girl and nothing more, but the bully got incredibly furious. Tae-hyuk didn't understand why they could treat him like that and swung at the guy who almost managed to dodge. The bully began to scream incredibly at the guy for daring to touch him and even worse, to raise his hands on him. Tae-hyuk declared to the whole class that from this day on, Da-im should be bullied, and that's how hell began in this guy's life. Everyone was afraid of the bully, and for this reason everyone turned away from the guy only because he decided to help the girl. Every day, the bullying got worse and worse, but it never ended. Children were filled with cruelty at that time, but only Yes suffered for them. It truly felt like hell. Yes. At that moment, I came to the most painful decision in my life, but there was nothing to change. There were always insults on the guy's desk, and he thought why they were treating him like that, because he wanted to do a good deed and help the girl. He decided to break off communication with the girl he still likes, but this really helped get rid of Tae-hyuk's bullying. But the guy almost immediately realized that his life would never be the same, because the whole school had already made a decision. For the entire school, he has definitely remained forever a loser who can be mocked. Kang Wu, having heard the whole story, even decided to apologize for asking about such a sensitive topic without thinking, but Da-im stopped him, saying that everywhere there are those who like to mock. Yes, just wanted to make each of those who bullied him regret it. That was his goal. But Da-im's main goal was Tae-hyuk, because he hoped that by getting rid of him, he might be able to. Yes, Im hoped that after this he might be able to return to communication with Soo-jin. Even Kang Wu was shocked when he realized that this girl was attractive to the guy. Yes, again dreamed about how wonderful it would be to regain communication with this girl, and it's good that he did not fully voice his dreams. Now Kang-woo realized that the guy started doing all this just for the sake of the girl he has liked all his life. Yes, even when returning home and watching the sky, I dreamed about this girl. He suggested that after catching the bully, Kang-woo should humiliate him, but then the bully asked if the guy really thought that if they defeated him, someone stronger wouldn't appear. Yes, and misunderstood the guy and thought that he also liked Soo-jin, but he just misunderstood him. Then the unexpected happened. Somewhere nearby, a familiar voice was heard, to which Yesim immediately responded. Soo-jin was talking to someone and asked him not to leave her just like that because she only wanted to do better. She tried to stop the unknown guy, and he asked her not to interfere and informed her that he could solve everything without her. Da-im and Kang-woo, who were observing the situation, discovered that she already had a boyfriend, and this knocked the guy out of potassium. He was wondering who it was. Then they noticed that this was their old acquaintance. Or to be more precise, it was Tae-hyuk. Both guys were amazed that it really was him. It was hard for both of them to believe. He swings at Soo-jin, saying that she is only required to play her role normally and nothing more. The girl almost cried and thought that this was all too much and offered to end it all. But Tae-hyuk simply said to sit quietly and began to leave her. And she was very uncomfortable that he could so easily leave her on the asphalt. Kang-woo suggested that in those years no one bullied the girl, but rather the opposite, which, of course, Da-im did not like. The bully tried to calm him down, realizing that the guy was almost crying only because this girl was busy. He tried to explain that Soo-jin was not the only girl, but in response, Da-im told him to get ready. Then the whole street heard the cry of a guy who called on Tae-hyuk to turn around. Kang-woo only tried to stop the guy, but he obviously didn't succeed well because Da-im had already decided everything for himself. The hooligan turned to this call, not understanding who could be calling at such a late hour. Kang-woo didn't understand what this guy was up to and was very scared by Da-im's actions. And the guy tearfully asked the main enemy in his life to fight with him, but not because of his tears or unrequited love. In fact, the guy was not ready for battle, but he held on very tightly and said that he would chicken out if he suddenly did not decide to do it. Kang-woo understood that because of his emotions, Da-im did not understand what he was doing and asked him to stop as soon as possible. Tae-hyuk asked if the guy was really so eager to try and fight with the guy. Yes, I'm understood that he was unbearably scared in reality, but he did not plan to stop in his actions. After all, he was angry not at the guy, but at the fact that his beloved girl could fall in love with such a bad guy as Tae-hyuk. He only did this because he was a very nice guy and he couldn't see what was happening to the girl. Soo-jin cried a lot because of Tae-hyuk's actions, and this was the guy's main goal, namely to make sure that the girl did not shed her tears. Tae-hyuk decided to find out once again whether he understood the guy correctly because no one could attack him like that before. He was shocked that the guy offered him a battle. Yes, I was never so confident in his actions, but it was at that moment that he realized that he definitely needed it. But Soo-jin's tears really irritated him a lot. He didn't want to see it anymore. He really shouted at the one who ruined his life, telling him that he had no right to make her cry. Da-im always looked at Soo-jin as an ideal, and her tears could not be accepted calmly by him. Tae-hyuk just grinned in response to everything the guy just said. Kang-woo began to come forward, and the bully was only interested in why he couldn't hit the guy, thinking that there was a hidden camera somewhere again. The bully was so tired that he did not expect anything from the upcoming battle, and Yesim shouted that he was definitely finished. Kang-woo really asked if they could defeat him, but the guy told him that with the coins he earned, he bought 3 items that would help them a lot, so everything would be perfect. Yes, Im was ready to use the first item, which was not so perfect, but could clearly help the guys win. The effect was called a copy chamber and allowed you to create a copy of your combat skills within 30 minutes. Having received the camera in the guy's hands, a button appeared to copy Tae-hyuk's boxing. A flash also appeared in front of the guy and the copying was completed. Kang-woo immediately gained these skills and even his body began to change. The guy was amazed that the boxing position was like home to him because he had never boxed before. The system reported that the guy was provided with fighting boxing skills for 30 minutes. Tae-hyuk was amazed at such impudence and believed that Kang-woo was too arrogant for a boxing fight with him because he was a champion. He rushed at Kang-woo, shouting that he was about to die. Kang-woo put up a very good block, but Tae-hyuk believed that the guy, even with protection, would not be able to do anything to him. Yes, Im was amazed at how this man was actually a champion and told Kang-woo not to stop under any circumstances. Of course, the guy was not at the same level, but still he didn't miss many of the blows. Kang-woo experienced incredible pain from every missed blow but did not give up. But Tae-hyuk was too fast to deliver at least one blow, and this speed strained him. Yes, I'm realized that if they try to defeat the guy only by boxing, they won't succeed because the guy's endurance has increased. He still lacks experience. Kang Woo asked the guy for help, realizing that if he tried to do everything alone, he would definitely not succeed, and Da-im was faced with a choice. He chose the easier way and decided that he needed to finally use the second item he bought. At that moment, the guy used an item that helped him become stronger and learn some new skills. The skill machine gave Kang Woo the skill that the system reported, and the bully became more confident. He flew more confidently to attack Tae-hyuk, and Tae-hyuk was ready to bypass the guy's slow blows just as easily. The bully grinned at Kang Woo because he was too slow and again flew into the attack, which could have played a bad joke on him like last time. But then Tae-hyuk's face changed sharply, and he even seemed to become scared because the bully had acted differently than the last time. Namely, he attacked with his feet. In boxing, no one uses their feet, which means that this will be the weak point of the bully. Kang Woo was determined to attack and already knew that the guy would not be able to do anything. The attack was of enormous force from Kang Woo, and it was carried out in the leg. The system reported that this was a professional MMA strike, but it was called a low strike. Tae-hyuk even staggered from a blow of such force because he definitely did not expect to see legs in this battle. Yes, Ima was amused by the fact that his slave no longer uses the blueprint of bully boxing, but now he can use his legs during the fight. The guy realized that boxing cannot be won by boxing, and for this reason, he had to come up with something that would lead him to victory. Now, Tae-hyuk was the one who suffered the blows and could not do anything in this situation. This was more like kickboxing on Kang Woo's part, and he was definitely enjoying this battle. Tae-hyuk didn't understand how the guy learned to fight so well in such a short period of his life. Yesim now became confident that victory would be theirs, because his opponent's legs were weak and he could not stand normally. The guy wondered why the bully was so puzzled, but he suggested that perhaps the blow was too strong. Da-im decided not to waste time and ordered Kang Woo to quickly finish off this enemy. Kang Woo decided to end this battle with the same low blow, although at that moment, an unexpected thing happened. At this time, Tae-hyuk was able to analyze the blow and what it was aimed at, and also understood how he could act against it. He decided to resist by raising his hips, and this was an excellent option and way of fighting. Yes, Im did not expect such an outcome of events because he thought that since the guy was engaged in boxing, he would not come up with a way to defend himself. Kang Woo also couldn't imagine that the guy had anything in his head about such blows. Tae-hyuk, in turn, did not think that everything would be so simple and was incredibly glad of his smart self. The system informed Da-im that this guy is a battle genius and about a new passive evasion skill. Yes, Im didn't understand how a guy could master a new evasion so quickly and why he was considered a combat genius. The system reported that this quality can be traced from the continuation of the battle, and that only natural fighters have such talent. Tae-hyuk began to continue attacks on Kang Woo and informed him that the lower attack would no longer work on him. Kang Woo tried to find an opportunity to confront the guy, but at this moment in time he could only defend himself. The guy didn't want to just lose to this man because he understood that quite a few resources had been spent on him. Tae-hyuk, seeing the lower attack, only smiled sarcastically and decided in his head that such a function would no longer work against him. The bully was so smart in battle that he realized how he could also cause pain, so he allowed this attack to be carried out. Kang Woo was amazed by this outcome of events because his knee was dislocated after his own attack. Da-im, observing the situation from the outside, could not understand how Tae-hyuk did this to his slave. The bully was happy that he managed to convince him that such attacks would not happen to him again. The guy understands that if they fight this man without protection, they will definitely lose. Tae-hyuk just screams and rushes at Kang Woo and wonders if the guy understands that he will never win against him because he is stronger. Kang Woo tried his best to defend himself from every blow just to get a small opportunity to attack, although the pain was already piercing him. Yes, he understood that not one of the boxing styles yet works as it should, and he urgently needs to come up with something else. The guy understood that his slave had high endurance and strength, but he lacked speed. And on the other side was their enemy who had speed and excellent skills, so he had everything that was really needed for this battle. Yes, Im realized that the most advantageous moment was only a battle at close range. But the only problem was that even at close range, the chances were small for their opponent. Tae-hyuk just laughed and called Kang Woo's attacks too pathetic for him, and he definitely couldn't be defeated like that. He used the Damato shift to further attack the enemy. Tae-hyuk had already aimed his fist to attack Kang Woo, but it was a more serious attack. This attack was right slash, and it was aimed at vital organs. Kang Woo experienced a huge amount of pain and incredibly quickly lost consciousness from the shock of his body. Yes, I'm realized that if everything continues in this vein, then his friend could definitely die, and they don't need that. The blow was dealt to the liver, and perhaps this blow also damaged the guy's ribs. The guy immediately fell, but he did not completely agree with his body and did not plan to give up so easily. But still, he could not resist further and lost consciousness, and the system reported a critical condition. Tae-hyuk did not continue to attack further, but said that it was impossible to scare him with such pitiful attacks, and continued this conversation by saying that he allows him to continue living. Yesim realized that their opponent was right because Kang Woo used to live happily only because he lived at the expense of the weak. His life was always very carefree only due to the bullying of those who were much weaker than him, and no one opposed him. For these reasons alone, his school life seemed so ideal. Now his life has changed 180 degrees because at one moment Da-im appeared. But yes, Im was so sure that something in the guy's head had changed with his help, and he was helping him only for these reasons, but was it all like that? Surprisingly, Kang Woo did not plan to just give up in this battle, and the system informed them that the passive skill Indomitable Will had been activated. Yes, I was amazed that the bully was able to get back to his feet after this, but then he realized that this was his character trait. Indomitable Will was that after his strength drops to 0, he can gradually increase it to 20%. Kang Woo apologized but said that he would never give up in his life just because of his injuries. Tae-hyuk was shocked by such statements because he personally wanted to end this. He understood that this would be completely inappropriate now, but decided to apologize for all the past mockery of people. Kang Woo understood that he could not do anything else because the foundations are not only in his head, and said that the only way he could help is to confront this bully. He rushed to attack Tae-hyuk and asked the guy while he was holding him to come up with a way to defeat him. Yes, I was amazed at this behavior and did not understand how he would resist it. But he understood that he no longer had a choice, and he urgently needed to come up with a way to defeat their common enemy. While the guys were fighting and Kang Woo had some kind of endurance to attacks, the guy tried to calm down and quickly come up with a way. He didn't even have time to follow the progress of the battle and could notice that Tae-hyuk's movements were only accelerating all the time. Kang Woo would definitely not be able to resist this guy for a long time despite the enormous amount of endurance and strength. Yesim all this time was just trying to quickly come up with any way to defeat Tae-hyuk. Yes, I'm understood that at any moment Kang Woo could receive the same attack as before, and this could definitely turn out badly. The guy also understood that in this case the lower attack would not help. Tae-hyuk learned to defend against it. Yes, I believed that he was definitely missing something, but he couldn't understand what it was and how to deal with this guy. The guy thought about how the attack from the lower attack occurred and something came to his mind. He finally figured out how to resist him. All he had to do was do the attack in reverse. Yesim was informed by Kang Woo that he had come up with a way to remove Tae-hyuk's legs, and he asked how. Yesim gave the order to act only according to his words and shouted a low blow. He tried to explain that all this was only because he learned to defend himself, but everything was a little wrong. And Kang Woo didn't understand why he should start all over again, but agreed to act exactly because the guy told him. Tae-hyuk just continued to shamefully mock the guy and asked how long he was going to endure the beating. Kang Woo removes the block and with a sharp movement swings his leg at the guy, and Da-im-ji only dictates the lower one's word, which is precisely why the order is not given in full. The guy still continued to only report the lower blow, and Kang Woo didn't understand what was happening. He still just raised his hand to strike. Yes, Im did not give the order to strike, and this was already beginning to infuriate the bully, and he decided to look at him. Seeing with what enthusiasm the guy seemed to tease them, he definitely stopped understanding everything that was happening and just started yelling at the guy because he stopped understanding him altogether. Yes, Im was happy because they really could stop Tae-hyuk's legs. Kang Woo realized what was happening because the enemy could not concentrate on striking since he had to defend himself. Tae-hyuk was infuriated that he could not concentrate on the blow because all his concentration was spent on defending himself from the blows. Kang Woo finally understood what all this was for. They were able to stop his fast legs. Yes, I was happy because they had never been so close to victory as now. Tae-hyuk was always so annoyed that he had to spend a lot of time defending himself, and the guys in turn. Kang Woo was already making faces and just having fun with this whole situation. The guys really had a lot of fun with the fact that with one simple action, they could control such a bully. Tae-hyuk could no longer stand on one leg, but he definitely considered them psychopaths and did not understand why they acted this way. Yes Im immediately shouted that the most opportune moment had come for something and was waiting for action from Kang Woo. And the guy rushed into the attack, realizing that he would not be able to read further actions on their part. Taehyuk understood why they were doing all this, but he still did not understand what would happen next. The only thing he could do was try to dodge and run away, but everything was not so simple. Kang Woo had already grabbed the guy by the neck and did not give him any further action. He had no choice left. Da-im was ready to use his last skill on Kang Woo to finally defeat this guy and told him this. The enhancement buff was that it increased all characteristics, taking into account how much health was lost in the battle. Yes Im believed in the powers of Kan Yu and informed him that the buff had begun to take effect and his time had come to attack.